Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. And as we promised earlier on in the breakfast show, today we take a look at the latest developments when it comes to the economic sector in Egypt. Where are we at and what are we expecting in the future? And we have been witnessing quite a lot of changes when it comes to this vital sector. So joining us this morning in the studio, we're very pleased to have with us Dr. Karim Abadir, Professor of Economics and Finance at the Imperial College of London. Thank you very much, Doctor, for joining us. Thank you.
Good morning, Dr. Abadir. You said you're on a short visit here to Egypt and you attended the elections. But do you see a lot of people optimistic for the current phase and the future phase of economy? How do you see what's coming up?
People are not facing the problem, and we have to face the problem to start discussing the solutions. Part of the solution, the biggest part of the solution is to acknowledge there's a problem and to identify what the problem is. And then you can start putting solutions for that.
What is the problem from your own point?
There are many problems. There are the long-term problems, structural problems that we had an economic program for during the parliamentary elections. The Free Egyptians Party had this very detailed program. But unfortunately now we're facing a different kind of problem, which is basically a rescue of the economy. So in addition to the regular program that we had back then, now we're drafting a rescue package. Because we're heading towards a serious crisis. We have another 2-3 months before we run out of foreign currency.
Doctor, you know, there are a lot of rumors when it comes to the Egyptian economy. Sometimes you read, no, everything is fine and our foreign reserves are more than enough and sufficient. And then on the other side, you have a lot of news that we, as you just said, we're running out of foreign currency. Investments are withdrawing, not even continuing, but withdrawing from the country because of the lack of stability and security. If you could clarify to our viewers where exactly we stand and what is the biggest hurdle that stands in our way?
We have to have a constitution. And we have to have a good constitution because investors, whether they're local or foreign, are not going to invest if there's uncertainty. The biggest enemy of investment is uncertainty. And we have to ask the the majority in the parliament to stop playing games with the constitution because until we have that, the economy is going to suffer more and more. And in terms of the economic climate, sorry, but I don't accept at all the government's claims because why, if the economy is doing okay, are we going to the IMF with a hat begging them for money? That's one example. Another example, why do we have queues at the petrol stations? Because we have...
bread also.
Yeah, that's another proof that we've run out of petrol. We don't have the cash to import it. In fact, we've sold, the Nazif government has sold in advance 10 years of petrol. So we are now in a dire situation because without the foreign currency, we're not able to import oil, we're not able to import wheat. The harvest of the wheat this year is good, exceptionally good, but that's not enough.
But are we able to pay the extravagant salaries for high officials and we're still able to pay that kind hefty amounts of money for the high official ranking officials in Egypt? And,
no, we shouldn't be paying salaries that are not justified. If somebody is producing something in return, we should pay them.
CEOs in banks.
But let me ask you, how many of these people are around, and let's multiply how much extra they're getting compared to what maybe they should be getting. We can save this money, but it's not a huge sum. It's not going to be billions of dollars.
But if we keep looking at salaries, for example, and we keep looking for the government funds, the fund boxes, for example, and if you keep looking at the embezzled money that was transferred to the Bank of New York, for example, I was just talking in the press review, and the amount of money that lies there in other countries, Western countries, at least it could drop our debts, for example.
Well, there is a lot of
money. It will
all
add.
Absolutely, I fully agree with you. And you probably read our economic program then, because this is what we were saying in the parliamentary elections. We said we're going to employ lobby groups that are... you can ask a government to give you back the money. You're going to go through a lot of legal problems until you get the money. But if you employ also lobby groups abroad, if it's an elected government, like most of these countries where the money is, are democratic countries, you put pressure on these governments by choosing lobby groups to fight your case.
And we haven't even taken a step.
We haven't done that. We're completely, it's as if we don't want to, we want to avoid the embarrassment of what really lies abroad and how much money was smuggled and so on. We need the government to completely open its books, to be completely honest with its people. Because if we don't do that, and we're facing a crisis, why should the people cooperate with the government? The people have to know the depth of the problem and have to know...
If the government is not cooperating, why people...
exactly,
other people
they have to believe in their government. They have
Yeah.
to believe that the government is sincere in trying to solve the problem.
Doctor, you mentioned the importance of a good constitution in order to get the economy back on track. How about with the upcoming presidential race? Do you think that this is going to play a role in resuscitating the Egyptian economy?
During the parliamentary elections, I was saying, please don't talk about names of parties, talk about programs.
Right.
And I'd like the candidates to start telling us about the program. Unfortunately, we were talking about the economy all the time, but then the mood at the time in the street was to talk about who's more religious than the other one. And this is completely useless when it comes to solving the economic problems. I mean, ask some of these parties that are now in charge of parliament, are we going to raise or lower the taxes, and by how much? They have no answer. So these are the kind of debates we have to be starting immediately before the crisis hits, because also we have to be ready with a solution, and the solution has to be carefully thought through and discussed. And we haven't done that, and we're not doing that in the presidential elections, and I'm afraid we're still discussing personalities, not solutions. And also, we're going to elect a president, and we don't know what his powers are going to be. And this is dangerous. That's why we have to stop playing games with the constitution, have a constitution ready, a good one, as soon as feasible. And in the meantime, we can, in the meantime, the economy is going to suffer, but at least people are going to see, investors abroad and investors locally are going to see if we're serious about solving the country's problems. We've wasted a year and a half. We called for the constitution from the very beginning. If we had a constitution that was properly drafted from the beginning, we would have saved a year and a half of people dying, people's lives being torn apart because the economy is falling in pieces, a parliament that's completely ineffective because it doesn't have full legislative powers, a government that doesn't have full executive powers. All these things, these are about the basic rules. If we don't have clarity in the organizational structure, then forget about anything. You can think about a corporation. You cannot run a corporation without rules about who's responsible for what and who can do what. And we don't have that in the economy, in Egypt in general.
You've mentioned several important points. Among them is the necessity of declaring a constitution, which eventually, unfortunately, will have to take a lot of time, because this is going to define the future of Egypt for almost 100 years to come. So it's in spite of our dire need to establish a constitution, we should give it time, whether we like it or no. People suggested a constitutional declaration, but then said it also won't work. Add to that also, there is a court ruling that this parliament, according to the dismay of everyone before the court ruling, will have to be dissolved because it's not legal. So
I witnessed a lot of the cheating. I was in the war room. You were talking about my previous visits during the parliamentary elections. I spent 4 months in Egypt working in the Free Egyptians Party, and I was in the war room daily, and I documented a lot of the cheating that went on, and it's not just me, all the other war rooms around the country did that. So quite apart from the rules on which the parliament was voted, there was a lot of rigging, which I hope will not happen again during the presidential elections. We have to fix these things. We have to be serious about transparency and democracy. And also we have to give our constitution time, but it's not something that is, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. A lot of countries have produced decent constitutions. We have a lot of constitutional experts that have been excluded from the choice of the original committee that the parliament chose, which is the complete, it's a scandal. We have some of the best brains in the world for constitutional matters, and they were not
and
included.
Philosophers also, and thinkers.
Yeah, and all sections of society have to be represented. Otherwise, you're going to get a constitution that's going to be here for a few years until there's a new parliament, until this parliament is dissolved or voted out. And then, what do? We go back to uncertainty and another constitution and so on.
Square one.
It's
no stability, no economy.
Yeah, and in the meantime, the poor are suffering more than anybody else.
Indeed.
Because the government is there in... principally to take care of the ones that are not able.
Don't you think, I'm sorry to interfere here, but don't you think the poor were the people who brought the Islamists to the, because they're...
There was widespread rigging, widespread misinformation, all these things are... the poor, yes, were not well informed maybe, but there were a lot of them that didn't vote or whose IDs were taken and they were convinced that they're going to go to hell if they don't vote for some candidates. I mean, also the law was not applied. Religious slogans were forbidden by law and are forbidden in the current election, and there was a declaration by the committee that will oversee the elections to remind people of that, but it was not applied in the first time and nobody was punished. So why would it be...
What's the point of the law if it won't
exactly.
be implemented?
You're encouraging people to use it more and more if you don't apply the law.
The stock market. A lot of people have a lot of questions regarding the Egyptian stock market. Daily we read reports, stock market has lost 3 billion, gained 3 billion. Where does the Egyptian stock market stand, which it was one of the more stable and the more renowned stock markets in the region?
Yeah, I'm not worried about the stock market because the stock market is based on the expectations of what the company will do in the future, how well it will perform, and that's totally based on the economy, on the state of the economy, also the individual company's performance, but the stock market as a whole cannot deviate from the expectations of the economy. So if you fix the economy, if you at least start on the correct road, then the stock market will recover, and will recover much faster than the economy itself.
Good news there.
Yeah.
Doctor, I know that we have a problem concerning the future of economy here in Egypt until we contain the situation, but don't you think there are revenues that we can try to work it out somehow, like the tourism, for example,
Absolutely.
like the small and medium enterprises and you know, stuff like that. Do you think there could be some hope, maybe?
There is, and the rescue package that we've put together draws on unusual resources or resources we haven't exploited so far. Everybody is talking about the Suez Canal and developing services along the Suez Canal and so on. And it was in our original program I wrote the first draft way back in April of 2011, and we had this, but we also had unconventional things. For example, we're just collecting the tolls from ships passing. We haven't calculated, are these tolls optimal? Another idea that we've presented that could be used immediately to bring in a few billions is to say, okay, military ships are in a hurry to go through the Suez Canal. For example, if there's a military ship that's stationed in Cyprus and wants to go to Yemen or to Somalia, it has two options. It goes through the Suez Canal, arrives there quickly, or it takes a couple of weeks to go around Africa and get there. They're willing to pay anything to get quickly through there. So you can raise the tolls on military ships, and you can also revise the whole tolling structure. We need a scientific study of this. What's the optimal toll structure and prices? We haven't done that.
And you think the reason we're not doing that because the experts like you who are mentioning those facts, who are supposed to study these things, are not in the right place, and the people who are supposed to study those things are people who are not professionals, like the people in the parliament, and they don't know the value of what you're saying. That's why this is happening.
We were asking for full transparency. Tell us what the figures are, then we can help you. And this is public knowledge. So this idea that I gave you about the military ships, paying more to go through the Suez Canal, this was in our original program as far back as 1 year ago. And the discussion has unfortunately focused on, like I was saying earlier, who's more religious than the other one. Not about, well, that's a good economic idea, let's use it. Even if you don't win the vote in the parliament, then at least the government can apply the ideas that you had that were good. We didn't even consider economics in this election. We will have to, because we're running into a war. We're running into a crisis in 2-3 months, and the debate will have to shift.
With regards to the IMF loan, you mentioned the IMF loan earlier. We are asking for this loan, but how far are we? We heard news that we're going to get the loan, and then we heard negating news that the loan has certain regulations.
Strings attached. They will never give us money without any strings attached, because simply they don't want to drop money in a black hole. They want to make sure that this money is going to actually do something. The way it is going at the moment, this money is going to just buy us another extra month of being able to import commodities, necessary commodities. This is not what the IMF loan should be about. And in fact, IMF loans are last resort loans that you shouldn't be even thinking about unless the country is in a real crisis. And in that case, it's a loan that is there to fix things, not just to keep you going for another. It's not a standard bank. The IMF is not a normal bank that will give you money that you repay on normal terms.
Right, Dr. Karim Abadir, Professor of Economics and Finance, Imperial College London. Thank you very much for coming over. Best of luck. And right now, on one of the most important and biggest temples, the West Banks of Luxor in Habu Temple, we have a special report coming up by Tina Yunus on that particular temple.